Well, good evening, everybody. There's a number just joining us at the moment, and as they come in, we'll get started on the presentation. I'll introduce myself. First of all, I'm Peter Stock with Homeschool.today. We're really pleased to have everybody joining us this evening for our third seminar this week. And tonight we're talking about high school and junior high. And it's a neat subject. It's a great opportunity, and I'm looking forward to what our presenter Patty Marler has to say. This is a national seminar. We're broadcasting coast to coast, and we have had people from, as we said last night, all the way from Newfoundland to British Columbia, and sorry, wait.
All across the country.
All across the country, yeah.
Peter.
Yeah. A little technical problem there. Okay, so yeah, we're broadcasting across the country, lots of participants and lots of great questions too. And the message that we have for you is that you can do it. And tonight is going to be a special edition of that because homeschooling through high school sounds a little more daunting for most people, but the truth is you can do this too. So that's our focus. And as we've done the other nights, we're going to have a presentation from Patty, and then we'll get into questions and answers. So you have an opportunity as a participant here tonight to ask whatever questions you have on this subject, and you can enter them in the chat. So that's how we'll be dealing with that. Chat box is at the bottom of the page there. Click on it at any time to ask a question. Maybe you just need clarification on something that was just said, or maybe you have a question that you'd like answered by Patty at the end of our presentation, and Patty will do that. So ask any question you have. Patty Marler is a wonderful lady, and she's somebody who's just finished homeschooling her own 4 children after 22 years, so she's got great experience there. She's also somebody who's offered leadership in the homeschooling movement at the provincial level as well in her province of Alberta. She led the Alberta Home Education Association as president. She's also represented that organization for many years as their government relations person, dealing with ministers of education, education bureaucrats. She really does know a lot about home education. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Patty, and she's going to tell us more about homeschooling through junior high and the high school years. Patty.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. It's always such a lovely introduction that you give me, and thank you so much for
You're
that.
welcome.
I'm just going to set my screen up here just so that we can get the presentation queued up. There we go. So I am really happy to be here again tonight. Homeschooling really very much is a passion of mine, having done it for 22 years and encouraged other families. You may think that you'd get tired of that, but I just love watching families flourish. And so I am really excited to be here again tonight at our 3rd workshop offered by Homeschool.today. I just want to tell you that the Homeschool.today website is absolutely incredible. I just came on with Homeschool.today, so I had nothing to do with the production of that website. And as I searched through it, I realized this is the best resource that, just undeniably, the best resource in Canada for homeschooling. So you really need to take advantage of this Homeschool.today website. There are so many questions that are answered there, so much valuable information. I really encourage you to take advantage of that. So, this is always my favorite slide because this is a snapshot, several snapshots actually, of my family. So in this photo, it is the young man in the center who's my son, And these are our three daughters. And so I try to give an image of what was important to them when they were doing their homeschooling through high school. And of course, there is much more than just the sports and the music, but this is a good snapshot of my children and who they are. So we're going to get to the topic now, which is homeschooling your junior high or middle school and high school age students. And I just want to talk about that decision. The decision time around deciding to homeschool through high school for many people, and myself included, was very similar to that very initial question that I had was, am I going to homeschool? It can be a very daunting question for many people. We go through, some people have a history of homeschooling and have come through with their young preschool and elementary school children. And now they get to those junior high and high school years and they're wondering, can I still do this? Is this still a viable option for our family? So I want to encourage you that if you're feeling that, to just take a breath, and we're going to talk about it a little. And if you're jumping in at this point, I just have to say, what an amazing time for you to jump in. It's going to be such a wonderful journey that you go on with your student. As you begin to think about the decision, or as you have made the decision, whatever the case may be, I want to make sure that you think about your provincial requirements. It's very important that we understand our provincial legislation and what's required of us within that legislation. Homeschool.today has provincial legal requirement information listed on the website. So again, go there to look for that information. I want to talk a little bit tonight about pressure from schools. And it's something that I've actually been hearing a lot about over the last couple of weeks, is that there seems to be a lot of pressure from brick and mortar schools to have students register in online programming that is done by the school. I want to encourage you that there are a variety of motivations for why schools may do that, not the least of which is finances. Schools receive a significant amount of money for each student, and as a student gets older in their education career, into middle school and then into high school, the amount of funding that a school receives is quite significant. So there are financial motivations from schools as to reasons why they may be strongly encouraging you to go online. I've even heard, unfortunately, of some recommendations here in my province of Alberta, where different schools are encouraging their students not to register until October 1st, which is actually a day after the funding deadline within our province. So please make sure that you take a look at the provincial requirements so you can get familiar with those so you can make wise decisions. I want to talk a little bit about compulsory attendance and mandatory ages of education in provinces. So these will vary from province to province. So at times, it actually makes it possible for you to educate your high school student without even notifying or registering your school board. So for example, if we look at Saskatchewan, one of the best legal provinces to home educate in, their mandatory age of education ends at 15. So if you have a student who is 16, now typically that is as of September 1st, but again, check your province's regulation and act material. But if you were to have a child who's the age of 16 in Saskatchewan as of September 1st, you're not even legally required to notify or register that child in a school. So each province has different compulsory ages, which I have listed here. And on the right, I have deadlines for registration listed as well. And some funding deadlines are not listed. So if your province provides funding for home education, those deadlines for notification to receive funding have not been listed. So why homeschool through middle school and high school? Well, the first reason is so that you can make choices. In the last 2 sessions, I spoke a significant amount about the difference between online school and parent-directed education. So I'm not going to spend much time talking about that here. And I would encourage you to review those videos if you have questions about the difference between online and parent-directed education. Basically, school-directed programming, online programming, means that the school maintains control, and they will provide you with the information, but they will also maintain responsibility for that program, and they will tell you what you need to do. When you home educate your students, then you as the parent maintain that authority in the education of your child. And when you do that, you have multitudes of options, and one option is not imposed upon you. So typically, again, check your province's requirements. So those multitude of curriculum options may include provincial curriculum if you so choose to use that, but there's also a plethora of other curriculum and materials that you can use in educating your junior high and your high school age students. The pursuit of academic excellence is a desire of many homeschoolers. We desire for our students to succeed, for them to become productive citizens in our society. And the choices and programming that you can decide on as a home educator opens up so many doors for academics. It provides a significant amount of educational options that are specific to the needs and desires of your child. And there's a flexibility to teach skills and behaviors that are necessary as your child transitions into becoming an adult. Some skills which may be lacking in certain school districts or in certain school programs. The focus of on your child's needs and desires, like I said, is very significant, because if you have a child who's inclined to study music or study special programming, you can make that the focus of your programming. And also you can make choices that focus on your child's safety and well-being. Many families have chosen to home educate due to issues that their children are facing in school, such as bullying. And COVID now is one of those safety issues that is encouraging many families to look at this wonderful option. And finally, the desire to maintain close family bonds and relationships is actually one of the greatest benefits of homeschooling. It's one of the side spin-offs to educating your children at home that can be a primary reason for many people to choose this option. So, why junior high and why high school? Can you really teach junior high and high school age students. Well, in the past 2 workshops, I talked about a couple pieces of research that showed how students who have parents who teach them just excel way above average. It doesn't matter what the parent's education is. A parent who is focused on their child, who desires to have them learn, is the best indicator for student success, no matter where they are. So students who are home educated score significantly higher on standardized testing than students who are educated in brick and mortar schools. So teaching elementary school children is like planting seeds and watching the little seeds sprout and watching them take root. And it's really a wonderful, beautiful, exciting time to educate your children. There are so many interesting things that you can do. Getting into middle school, you have students who are now growing. And in that middle school time, you are providing a good, solid environment for that student to thrive. You are providing shining light that will decide whether they grow this tall or whether they grow this tall. So you are providing an environment that's going to help them grow much closer to what their potential is. And then once you get to high school, it is like reaping the benefit of all that has gone before. In those early days, you teach your children to read, you teach them to spell, you teach them to multiply, divide, fractions, you talk about history. But once you get to high school, the conversations, the in-depth amount of material you can get into, the thinking, the processing, and sharing that with your child, it is like reaping a great harvest. So I encourage anyone who's considering continuing on with homeschooling to go. And if you are coming in at this point, you are coming in at one of the most exciting points of a student's education career. So welcome aboard. Don't miss out on this. So tailoring programs to youth passions and callings is one of the benefits of home educating through middle and high school. Many students have developed interests or are developing interests that may go past school and may go into their careers. So many students have decided to focus on an area of music or athletic pursuits. Some of them have post-secondary desires that they're beginning to formulate and beginning to lean towards. Many young people will have missions focuses. When you home educate, you can take the interests that your students have and you can make those the core of what you're doing at home so that they can grow and flourish in those areas of interest while still doing all of the other stuff that they need to do for their high school program. And if your child has not yet decided on a focus, and even if they haven't decided on a focus by the end of high school, that's okay. I mean, that's kids. Probably some of us didn't know what we wanted to do. Maybe some of us still don't even know what we want to do. And that's okay. So just keep their options open. Be rigorous in your educating of them and pay attention and work hard, and your students will thrive. So like I said earlier, discussions are one of the best part of homeschooling through high school. Youth have a lot of questions. And when you homeschool, You are the person they ask these questions of. How does the world work? How does it fit in? How come that person makes the kind of decisions that they make? How come these sort of decisions are made for our world? What's going on? How come my community is like this? These are all questions that you get to be the person who receives them. And don't be scared by that, because if you don't know the answer, it can set you off on a journey to discover them. There were many, many questions that I did not know the answers to, that we looked at together and explored and discovered good answers for. So it is really an exciting time. Your youth will come to you with questions about personal interactions. Youth need adults in their lives to help them in these situations. And you are the adult who's going to direct them instead of them relying on peers and people their age who are inexperienced in so many things. You get to be a mature and wise voice when they have questions about personal interactions. And you also get to be the one who answers those budding youth questions. It will be you who's answering those. And I'm very thankful that it was me who is answering those in our children's lives, my husband and I. One of the best parts of home educating is the quality of discussion that occurs when there is a large quantity of time spent together. So you will have big academic questions that begin to come at you as well in these middle and high school years. You will have questions about politics. Why do they make those sort of decisions? Why did they make those decisions about COVID? Why are masks mandatory now? Those are things that you can discuss with your children and discuss what how those political decisions are made. And like I said, if you don't know, it's time to go exploring. Learning how to vote is probably one of the most important things that you can teach your child. And I don't mean necessarily showing them how to tick off the ballot, but I mean how to make good decisions, informed decisions, when they are choosing who the leaders of our municipality, of our province, of our country will be. Youth can get involved in politics as young as 14 and then involved in voting as young as 14, because in party politics, the age of voting is 14 as compared to when they vote in an election, the age is 18. So you can begin to teach your child about voting when they are in upper middle school. Historical questions. How have the events of our past affected our world today? And have we learned anything from those? These are big questions. Economics. Does it matter if we stimulate our economy by building things? Does it matter if we cut out certain portions of businesses within our world? How does that affect our life? Big questions. Legal decisions. Why did that person get off in court and this person not? Good questions. Faith and religion. How come this person makes decisions in this way, where this person makes decisions in this way? And one of them says that it's their faith that drives their decision making. Talk about that. How does faith influence decision making? And organized religion. Let's talk about that and the influence that religion and faith places have in our society. And family life. Talk to your children. What's the significance of a family? What's the significance of working parents? What's the significance of marriage? What's the significance of having children? These are all things that your middle and high school age children will ask you about, and you can answer those questions. And I would rather have you answer those questions than a teacher. So how do we approach the academics that we're going to be teaching our students? Well, actually, before I get to the academics, I want to continue to talk about the well-rounded education. I want to talk a bit about work experience. I talked in the other sessions about how it takes significantly less time to complete the required work for students who are home educating, and that also applies to high school and junior high age students. Now, as you get into the middle school and high school years, the amount of work, the amount of time that those students will have to do will increase. But as compared to a brick and mortar school student, the time will still be less than that brick and mortar student. So there is time for work experience and for students to develop some of their working skills. Financial planning and budgeting. Especially if your child works, you have the opportunity to teach them how to budget. And if they don't work, it is really a good idea to give them an allowance. Teach them about budgeting. Have them begin planning for their post-secondary studies and saving money for that. Develop habits for financial success now, and it will serve them well for the rest of their lives. Budgeting, fiscal responsibility, teach them how to give, teach them how to save, and teach them how to spend well, and teach them that deficits should not exist. Teach them how to manage money well. And you can even talk to them about investment. In our high school years, I actually had an investment manager come and speak to whole groups of homeschooling junior high and high school students to talk to us about how investing money works. What does it mean to buy government bonds? What does it mean to put your money in a bank? What does it mean to invest in mutual funds or stocks? And those were life lessons that will serve all of those children for the rest of their lives. And I shouldn't say children, I should say youth. They were young adults at that point. Volunteering is important. Teaching people teaching our youth to contribute in ways of serving. And then having groups of kids who are able to meet together. All of these help to make a well-rounded home education program. So now what do we do with our children? First of all, we need them to be awake, because junior high and high school kids sleep more. And if they don't sleep more, they sleep at different times. So the US Center for Disease Control and Prevention recommends that middle and high schools start their programs at 8:30 or later to give students the opportunity to get the most amount of sleep they need. But most American adolescents start school too late. Now, you may have your own family perspective on waking and sleeping hours, and that is fabulous. That is great. But you may not, and you may decide to adjust your hours to allow your student to get the rest that they need. One of my students, one of our youth, was involved in a program that had very late hours, many nights a week. And so she came home very late, sometimes not getting to bed regularly till 11 o'clock. So we didn't start her school till quite a bit later in the morning so that I could make sure she had enough sleep to be able to attack the things that she needed to do in school when she was awake, when she was cognizant, when she had the capability of approaching those things. That's one of the great benefits of homeschooling. So now let's talk about middle school students and middle school homeschooling. Students who are in middle school begin to change the way they think. They're capable of focusing more and thinking more about how things work. So you will begin to have more discussions about how things work. You will also begin to tackle more challenging academics. We're getting into the algebra time. We're getting into the science conceptualization time, the memorizing of concepts, the just much more detail in what a program requires. So, and that's because these students at this age are beginning to think in different ways and to be able to process things differently. At this point, a parent will actually do less direct teaching and more learning alongside with their student. So if you feel like you don't know enough to be able to teach your student, that's okay. Jump alongside the learning train because you're going to learn so many things that it's going to be an exciting time for you. Being a home educating parent really is such a blessing in terms of how much you are able to learn. Your student at this point is going to need to begin to become self-motivated and self-directed in what they do. Now, they're not going to start junior high and be self-motivated. You need to build these skills. You need to encourage them to start doing their own scheduling. So things such as I would start with their own extracurricular activities because they have motivation to go to those activities. So they're going to be more likely to schedule them and to keep track of when they need to leave and to keep track of all the things they need to get done so that they can do those things. So it's a good place to start, is them tracking their own extracurricular activities. You will want to provide less daily oversight, checking everything that they've done to make sure that it's completed. But you'll want to back off a bit and let them take more responsibility for that. Now, they are not at a point yet where you can just let them loose and go, because 3 months down the road, you may discover that nothing has been accomplished. So you will want to do weekly checkups. And if the scheduling is not going the way you plan, you may need to go to every couple days to check in, and then increase that time as the child matures in their ability to handle those things. Increase the time between sort of checking up to make sure that they're doing the work. And the consequences for lack of motivation in their studies should be real. There should be things that they're not able to do if they don't get to their studies. Now, if they don't complete studies because they don't understand things or they're taking longer on a project, that is much different than not completing things due to lack of motivation or lack of getting to it. So make sure I encourage you to not punish students who aren't grasping concepts, but to continue to work with them. And the last point is that your relationship with them as a parent is absolutely paramount in all this. So if your relationship begins to suffer with any of this, that is your primary focus, is to rebuild that, because when your relationship is good, then you will work together to achieve good educational outcomes. When it's a little bit rocky, you are likely to see your child accomplish less. Junior high attitudes. I often hear from teachers that this is quite a challenging time to teach students. We hear a lot about the negative characteristics of students in that middle school time. But in the homeschool community, I don't hear those things as much. Homeschool students tend to maintain some of their innocent characteristics longer. Their respect for their parents, the interactions for their siblings and parents. They'll read together with them. They'll do many things that are fairly uncharacteristic of brick and mortar students. And I think primarily it's because they're not being watched by the other students. So they feel more free to just enjoy their family and not be judged for enjoying their family. So those junior high attitudes are not as the negative attitudes that you hear about. I haven't found that those are as prevalent in home educated students. And if you're just bringing your student home from junior high, you can watch them change. I mean, you probably have already seen some of the change during the COVID transition time. You have already done the deschooling, the most significant negative deschooling component through the COVID time, and things will get better. They probably have begun to get better already, and they will just continue to get better and flourish. I encourage you to do career exploration with your middle school children. Begin job shadowing. Go to post-secondary open houses. Go to trade skills. That's supposed to be competitions, not competitions. Trade skills competitions. And explore now many of these areas, so that when your student gets to high school, they can have a plan or begin to develop, or maybe not, but at least have been exposed to many things, so that you can develop a good, solid high school plan. So career exploration is something you'll want to begin doing in middle school. High school education. So we'll talk a bit more about the basics, the basic academics after we do the high school. So the high school, actually, yes, we will. So homeschooling in high school is high school homeschooling is homeschooling at its best. These students are now solidly solidifying their personal worldview and forming the foundations of their decision making. They're really coming into their own in deciding the kind of decisions and choices that they are going to make. They're going to have deep and significant conversations. In high school, you will spend a significant amount of time talking to your students about deep subjects. One of the best things that I did with our high school students was continue to drive them. And sometimes my children would remind me that we had good conversations in driving, so that I should drive them even though they are capable of doing it themselves. And they're right, because when you're sitting one-on-one in a car with your child, you talk, and you talk about all sorts of things. Take advantage of that time And just because a student has their driver's license does not mean that that I would encourage you to stop driving them. Your students will begin to challenge your position. They will begin to challenge the things that you say. And this is good because you want your students to take on their values, their morality, their beliefs as their own. And they can only do that when they challenge yours. I shouldn't say they can only do that, but one way of doing that is by challenging your perspective and hearing your reasons and rationale for why you think the things that you do, why you believe the things that you do, and why you make the sort of decisions that you do. And it's also good to talk about why and how other people make decisions. It's interesting, but one of the comments that I've heard about homeschooling is that only certain perspectives are taught. And I actually think the exact opposite happens. I think homeschoolers are much more likely to talk about a variety of perspectives and a variety of ways of making decisions. And then students can come to good conclusions and begin to make their own decisions and choices, which is what we want them to do as they move on into adulthood. High school programs. The development of your high school program is going to focus on what was discovered in that middle school exploration. What are the goals of our children after they are done high school? How can we work towards making those become a reality? If your student, like I said, if it's inconclusive, then keep as many doors open as possible. Continue to do all of those basic subjects and explore, and keep all the extras on the side going just in case they decide those are things that they want to get involved in. You are your child's parent and you know them better than anyone else. And you are best suited for helping make personalized plans that are going to serve your student best. Changing paths is also common. You can spend 4 years working towards a goal to have your student change their idea of what they want to do afterwards. And that's to be expected. And it's okay. And the education that you've embarked on has not been lost. It's been a good part of the process of your child's decision making. As a parent, you need to be prepared for that though. Flexibility is the key. So high school student learning is, as compared to middle school now, is predominantly independent learning. And I encourage you to have a well-developed plan at the beginning. We talked a lot about program planning in the Choosing Curriculum workshop. So if you missed that, please go online and take a look at the Choosing Curriculum workshop that's available at the homeschool.today website. Create a well-developed plan that your high school student can use to help move through their year. In these years, the parent actually does even less teaching and even less learning alongside, and more guiding your students in how to find the answers that they need. So if you are worried about not being able to tackle advanced biology, that's okay. Your students have programs that they can use to help them. Now, I want to tell you about homeschool curriculum. Homeschool curriculum is laid out very differently than school curriculum. School curriculum is designed to have a teacher take the bits and pieces and sort of fill it all in. And if you were to just give the student a textbook, if you've ever looked through them, they're difficult to get big pictures and grand understanding from. Homeschool curriculum is typically developed, especially in the high school years, so that the student can do all of the learning that they need on their own with minimal assistance from their parents. So when you take an advanced biology course, you can pretty much be sure that this program will walk your student through what they need. Now, of course, some curriculum is better than others, but I encourage you to visit the resources on homeschool.today, and I'll actually show some of the resource providers in another slide, and take a look at the materials that they have. And most resource providers will divide up their resources by elementary, middle, and high school, so you can focus right in on material that's relevant to your students. So back to our high school learner, this student now needs to take ownership and responsibility for their learning. You can assist them with some things like scheduling, but generally speaking, they're responsible for making sure they get up, that they do their work, and that they complete it well. And I encourage you to talk to them about the consequences for working well, how it sets them up for success for post-secondary and for life. And I also encourage you to talk to them about what happens when they don't. When high school students don't take responsibility for their own learning, it's not you as a parent who suffers, it's them as the learner who suffers. And so they are really cheating themselves when they choose not to participate in their learning. So their motivation needs to come from them. Some students may be ready to take a break and go working because they just cannot focus on the academics anymore. If your school legislation allows for that, say a child to take a year to work, let's say the mandatory age of education ends at 16, then that student, when they turn 17, can take that year and be productive instead of wasting a year doing nothing or wasting time. So it's up to your student to be motivated and for you to share with them why they should be motivated. Many post-secondary students will take open studies courses at colleges. Many of my learners, in fact, all of my learners took some open studies courses at post-secondary institutions in their final year of high school. This will not only give them a grade in post-secondary school, it gives them a gentle introduction to post-secondary studies. It gives them a grade if you have not completed provincial curriculum exams. And it helps them to become familiar with the amount of work that's required. One of the great benefits of homeschooling through high school is that you have already developed that independent learning for your child. And that is one of the most difficult parts for most students who enter post-secondary, is the fact that a teacher is not walking them through everything that they need to do. And homeschool students excel because they're able to pick up and do the work. In high school, many students and parents will desire the assistance of tutors. I just can't do physics 30. I need some help for my child. Hiring a tutor is fine. Sometimes group learning is fine. Sometimes outsourcing individual courses is fine. You're still maintaining the authority for that education, and you're making those good decisions for those individual courses for your student. And some of these things are also available for your junior high student. If you need a tutor, want an online course, feel free to do those things. So when you're looking at curriculum, worldview is important. Recently, I heard about Nickelback. I've been hearing about Nickelback and how all their music sounds the same. Well, Nickelback has a unique music perspective. It doesn't mean they don't listen to other music. It doesn't mean they don't admire other musicians, but it does mean that they have their own unique music perspective. You, as an individual, have your own unique perspective, your own set of values, your own set of beliefs that inform the way you make decisions. Understanding different worldviews can help your children to understand how and why people have different perspectives. And a program of studies that I would encourage high school students to do is a program on worldview. Figure out why people think differently, what makes people think differently. So there are a couple resources here that I've highlighted. Oh my goodness, there's another spelling error. My apologies. The Deadliest Monster is a book. And then Understanding the Times is a complete curriculum, a wonderful curriculum by Jeff Myers. Choosing academic curriculum, you will choose more challenging curriculum. It's more challenging to prepare your own programs of studies. So the use of curriculum is more common. So if you had a student in the elementary years who you sort of were a bit more eclectic and just put things together and read a lot of books, it's a little bit more challenging to do that. So people tend to use a bit more formal curriculum as you enter the junior high and the high school ages. And once you get into those high school courses, there is a lot of detail, a lot of focus that is available in curriculum that is difficult to make sure that you catch all the pieces if you do it in piecework. I want you to choose subjects. We talked about that based on your post-secondary plans, and choose subject matter that's appropriate to your youth's learning abilities. Don't feel like you have to do things that your child is not capable of. The core curriculum for junior high and high school students is going to be English, math, history, and science. I encourage history over social studies. You can talk about the social components of it in your history, but I encourage history and geography studies more than social studies, which revolves more around ideology. So here's a listing of the homeschool providers that we have on our website, homeschool.today. You can go to our resources tab and find all these people. I can't ever identify all the curriculum that's available because each of these providers will have thousands of pieces of resources available for you to choose from. But hone in on the section that is relevant to you. And you can talk to those resource providers as well and ask their opinions. You can outsource courses. These resource providers, some of them do outsourcing of courses. So Tree of Life, Virtual High School, Christian Virtual, Apologia, these places will actually have courses that you can choose your child to take an English course or a chemistry course or a writing course. And I've used many such courses in my programming, and you can too. I don't like English. I like math and science. So I outsourced writing essays once they got to the high school level. Learning together with other homeschool families is also something that is of great value. You can plan individual courses together as families. The student will still do the bulk of the work alone at home, and then maybe you get together weekly to complete portions with other homeschool students and their parents. I always encourage parents to come with their students. You're not teaching someone else's child, their parent is teaching them. The parent comes with them and you do this together. We've done this in my group, and you can do this in your own group with many, many different programs. Advanced biology, we've come together and done the science experiments, the dissections, videos together. History of England, I've done as a group where we've looked at DVD series and then talked about the history of England. The Understanding the Times Worldview course. Some of the benefits to doing these things together is that it makes adhering to a schedule easier. So if your student looks at a textbook and it's 32 weeks long and they're feeling overwhelmed, breaking that up with other students and doing it together can help them. And then one of the great side benefits is that they are getting together with their other homeschool friends regularly. And that's something that you want to do, is make sure that your student has those interactions with their peers. Homeschool youth group, sporting activities, clubs, driving. You will have more opportunities than you desire to drive with your learning driver. Take advantage of it, just like any other homeschooling program, because the more time you spend with them, the better driver they will be. Educational gaps. Will there be gaps if you home educate your middle and your high school students? Yes. But there's gaps in every student's education, no matter where and how they are educated. There is no way you can possibly teach them everything there is to know. So don't worry about educational gaps. If your child doesn't know ABC, they may know D, E, and F. And the other students don't know D, E, and F. So gaps are to be expected. As long as you cover the core of what you need for your programming, then you will be good. There are also some gaps in the education brick and mortar system that I am very glad that are gaps for my children. There are some things that are learned and in the brick and mortar system that I would prefer remain gaps in my children's life. So plan your program. I'm not going to spend much time on this because we did this in the other two workshops. Evaluate your progress. Very important for you to evaluate. And in high school, especially important, you keep a portfolio of your student work so your student can have that information when applying for post-secondary. And that's a part of your record keeping. So evaluation is more unit tests. It becomes more objective. But things like English, of course, are more subjective, but you will want to apply marks. I always provide a rationale for the marks so that if anyone ever questions how I came up with a mark, I have a rationale as to how I came up with it. This is what we studied. This is what my student did. This is where I believe they accomplished because of this, this, and this. So keep track of those things. Good record keeping is important as a high school parent. And this is the fulfillment of my homeschool vision. When you complete your high school, your desire is to have fulfilled your homeschooling vision, not only in academics, but in the development of who your child has become And I'm feeling a little teary here because I am only very new as a retired homeschool mom. So the retirement or the fulfillment of this vision has just been realized in my homeschooling. And it is such a great blessing. If you need further assistance, we're here to help. At homeschooling.today, we want to help. We want to answer your questions. We want to be available. There's lots of materials on the website. We also have further in-depth materials and information for members. So if you're interested in becoming a member, taking advantage of our services, please sign up and purchase a membership. I encourage you to connect with a small group of other homeschoolers, connect with your provincial association if you so desire, and again, connect with us and connect with HSLDA in terms of the membership. The membership that you buy for homeschool.today is through hslda.ca, and that is our membership. That gives you access to all of our legal resources as well. We have legal services that are available too. So there's lots and lots and lots available to you. So I encourage that. So that would be the end. These are the, oops, I meant to put the other workshop on here. We completed a workshop on getting started and a workshop on curriculum development, and now our third workshop on homeschooling junior high and high school. So I think we will move to questions now. So thank you for bearing with me.
All right, thanks so much, Patty. And our participants tonight have asked some great questions, and we'll get right to them. The first one's just a clarification of something in the presentation. You had mentioned a couple of books on world perspective, and the one individual wanted to know what the second book was, the book that you mentioned after Baldwin. I don't know if you're able to look that up in your presentation.
I can tell you off the top of my head, actually.
Yeah.
It's the complete curriculum. It's called Understanding the Times by David Noble Jeff Myers and David Noble.
Okay.
So Understanding the Times.
Super. Okay. Now I had a few questions from people about getting into university. If I homeschool, how are my kids going to get into university? And this is quite a common question. Let's hear what you have to say, Patty, and I probably have a few thoughts to share as well. It's a very important question, and it's actually the answer I think is going to be very encouraging to people as well. So let's hear what you have to say first.
Yes. So getting into universities desire home-educated students, actually, because of the reasons I spoke about earlier. So many universities have actually developed homeschool policies for students who have not gone the regular route of completing provincial diploma or provincial exams. And they, some of them will allow the use of portfolio. Some of them will require specific courses. One of the best kept secrets in the education world is that diplomas, I don't know of any institution that requires a high school diploma to attend their institution, but they will require specific courses or course knowledge. So we have 4 students, and I think we've done 3 provincial diploma exams over the course of the history with 4 children. And my children have a total of 2 Polytech diplomas, 1 diploma in ministry, diploma in nursing, a degree in arts. So getting into post-secondary has become much easier over the years and is very doable for home educated students.
Yeah, exactly. And I would take it even a small step further and say that what we're discovering now is that most of the top universities in Canada and the United States actually give preference to home educated students. And there's a reason for that. They find that home educated students do better once they hit the university. They've already developed those self-study skills and the independent learning habits that they need to succeed at the university level. And universities know this now. This student or that student, and they say, on balance, we're doing better with the home educated students. So there are a variety of ways to apply. It could be standardized. You mentioned some of them, portfolios and standardized tests and so on. You don't need that high school diploma. So important thing for everybody out there to know and to be confident about if they decide to take this route with home education through high school. All right, so had a quick question here. Sure, go ahead, Patty.
Sorry, if I can just add one more point. I didn't want to repeat too much information that I had done in the other sessions, but if you go back to the choosing curriculum, I did show, I think it was the choosing curriculum talk, I did show a letter from a post-secondary institution that talked about how well the home ed students did, and they actually had a grade point average of 3.64 out of 4, which is an A-. That's the average. And that institution said that year, their awards night was dominated by home educated students. So the bulk of the awards were handed out to home educated students.
Right, that's exciting. Okay, this is sort of a shorter question, I think, but it's kind of on the universities or post-secondary topic. You had mentioned open studies courses, and somebody wasn't sure exactly what that meant. Could you just explain what an open studies course is?
Sure. When a student applies for a program, so something like nursing or engineering or something like that, those are called programs. So they're complete units. You're going to be a nurse or have a psychology degree or something when you're done. Open studies allows students to take individual courses. So without registering in a program or meeting the requirements to be admitted to a program, the student can take individual courses via an open study method.
Okay, and there are a lot of certainly community colleges have been doing this for many, many decades. This is sort of, think of it as night school, right? But students do, and they're also available online in many cases, right?
And now with COVID, I actually just received something in the mail saying that even more are available online.
Right, excellent. Okay, another question here. I'll read it out. I was hoping to touch on how to correct, well, this is the individual who's saying this. Could you touch on how to correct language arts subjects where there are not straight answers, such as there are in math or science? Math or science is very precise. How do you correct language arts subjects when there aren't straight answers? And yeah, so that was the basic question.
Yeah, so you could go to your yeah, no, that's too complicated. What I would what I might suggest is that you take a look at how some people evaluate writing. They tend to have a very methodical way of evaluating. They will look at content, they will look at punctuation, they will look at grammar, they will look at conceptualization, and they will assign points for those sorts of things. So evaluating writing can actually be a very constructive, use a very constructive methodology. Andrew Pudewa and the Excellence in Writing Institute has a very structured way of teaching writing. And I'm not sure, but I'm wondering, yes, he does. He has a very clear way of evaluating writing as well as the parent. So you could look at some of his resources, maybe. I think that's one of the resource providers on
It's
our
definitely
website.
listed on the website, yes.
Yes. So, and then some of the other providers like Tree of Life will have, their way of evaluating, because they will do those sorts of evaluating subjects. It is subjective. and it's subjective in school too. So don't ever think it's not subjective in school.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
We've had a number of people ask this. We get asked it every night. Are these sessions going to be available later? I missed last night's, or I missed 2 nights ago. Yes, the answer for everybody is yes. Yes. Sessions available on the homeschool.today website in the coming days, probably just the next few days, and you'll be able to watch anything you missed or review sessions you already saw if you wish, and you can share them with friends as well. And I had another question from somebody else about what's the difference between HSLDA and homeschool.today. Maybe I could answer that one just briefly, Patty.
Sure.
Patty, you did a great job talking about what HSLDA is, and homeschool.today is basically a website that we've obviously been talking about in detail, but it's just a website that is designed to help people who are considering homeschooling or want to get started homeschooling, and that's its singular purpose. HSLDA is a national organization that serves homeschoolers throughout their homeschooling journey with a variety of services. So as we provide those services, there is a membership fee. So HSLDA is a membership fee-based organization that provides services. Homeschool.today is a free service to those who are just getting started. So I hope that helps to explain the difference. If you want to find out more about either organization, please go to the websites. HSLDA's website is hslda.ca. Okay, there are more questions here, and we'll try to we'll continue on with them. You mentioned teens and sleep, Patty, and I thought that was a great interjection, because we certainly found that too with our teens, that there's a couple of years there, and their bodies are changing and they're growing, and they just literally need more sleep. And to try and force them out of bed to study math or something, it's just not effective. So we tolerated some sleeping in. But the benefits were ultimately there. And so very good point to keep in mind. All right. Okay, here's another one. Does the curriculum that we use need to be approved by some sort of body? And why don't you answer that for Alberta in particular? And I might mention a couple of other provinces where the answer is a tiny bit different. But
Sure. So if we're talking Alberta specifically, if you have notified under the home education regulation, so you're not doing school at home, you are home educating your student, which means you've filled out the Alberta notification form, then you can choose your curriculum. You develop your program, and you can choose what you want to use to fulfill those program plans. So an instructor will typically review that. They may give you some ideas and suggestions, but it does not need to be formally approved, no.
okay. Yeah, and
Okay.
that's the case. So sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, and there's a third option now in Alberta that came out yesterday, actually. Came out legally yesterday, which I'm very excited about, which is the third option in Alberta, the notification only option, where you notify of your intent to home educate, and then you don't have to provide anyone with any of your material. So if you're choosing the notification only option, you do not have to even have it reviewed by anyone.
Right. Okay. And I'll just sort of follow that up by saying that's the case in most provinces, where the answer is in most provinces. There's a fair bit of freedom to choose the curriculum that you think is best for your children. But there are a couple provinces where the rules are a little more restrictive. Newfoundland does have a more restrictive approach, but not as many as you would in most provinces. And in Quebec, you do still have technically the choice, but unfortunately, in Quebec, students there are being forced to write the provincial exams, which are based on the curriculum. So subjects, curriculum, but for some other subjects, such as
Just the internet.
can you hear me okay, Patty?
Now we can. It went a little wonky for a while, but it's back now.
Okay, super. Yeah, so for some subjects in Quebec, you can use whatever curriculum you choose. In others, you probably have to follow the provincial curriculum fairly closely if your kids are going to succeed at the exams. So that's something to consider in those two provinces. All right, another question here. The questioner says, I'm from Alberta and already registered the kids in a school. Can I withdraw them at this point?
Yeah, you don't have to withdraw them. All you have to do is notify with the notify of your intent to home educate with either the government. You know, I don't want to speak too much to that because I haven't read the legislation really closely yet. But you just have to notify with the school board or notify with the government, and then the school board that you've already registered with will get notice of that. So it's the last person, the last place that you notify with before the September 30th deadline, who's responsible for telling everyone else.
Excellent. Okay. We had one more here, and that was...
Oh, we're losing you for a second.
Oh boy, not sure what's happening there. Do you have some suggestions? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have some suggestions for consequences for children who don't do their schoolwork?
Well, you know, if they have plans, you know, you don't want to do this all the time. You don't want to do this all the time, but if your child has plans with a friend, they may not be able to meet with that friend because they have work to do. Now, you don't want to use that as a punishment all the time because some of those meetings are very important. But, you know, they may not be able to do a project that they were really looking forward to until something else is done. They may not be able to go to soccer practice until something else is done. So, you know, it's sort of a parenting thing. You know, how you do your consequences, the natural consequences, whatever you decide. Those would have been some of the things that I may have done.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think we've come to the end of the questions that have been posed, and not sure if there's anything else you'd like to conclude with, Patty.
You know I said it in the video, but homeschooling your high school age kids is really amazing because you not only get to educate them, you get to know them so well. They not unfortunately, but they know you really well too. But it is a beautiful and effective way to educate your children, and it is a beautiful way to do family.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, we hope that that in watching this presentation, you've been encouraged. You've had a lot of your questions answered. If you have more questions after this, you're not sure where to go, you can ask questions at homeschool.today. And again, we recommend membership with HSLDA as a great support throughout your homeschooling journey. I've been a member for many years, and Patty has been too, and we've seen real value in our membership. So anyway, thank you for joining us this evening. These sessions will be posted on the homeschool.today website in the next few days, and you can watch them and tell friends about them and use them as a resource. So thank you for joining us, and thank you, Patty.
Thank you.